This episode here is truly an incredible interview between myself and Ray Ross. She has a ton of insights. She's had a lot of personal, upfront experience dealing with the types of things that, well, people following this channel, I'm sure, are dealing with as well. So you're really going to enjoy it. The reason I'm doing this little intro here is that this was a bit of a mess recording it and putting it together. It was like the first time I'd ever done an in-person interview because Ray works at the same company I do, so we just grabbed an office room and recorded there rather than using Zoom. And just getting everything to set up and ahead of time was a nightmare. Then during the interview, we'd been sitting still long enough that the motion sensor lights in this room just went ahead and turned off. And we had to go turn the lights back on. Actually, in the video version of this, you'll see just for a brief second somewhere the lights turn off. I edited most of it out, but you will catch that just briefly. And then maybe 10 minutes later into the interview, the computer dies. I had forgotten to plug the computer in, the battery ran out. So we weren't even sure if we had this first half of this recording. We just kind of like plugged the computer in, turned it on, and tried to remember where we left off and picked up there. And that was a bit rough. Again, I kind of glossed over that with the editing, so you probably won't really notice that too much, especially not the podcast listeners. You guys won't notice it at all. But the other thing too that was a huge hang up here is I didn't realize until after the recording was done, the webcam that I was using, which is a pretty decent quality webcam, records really high quality videos for me when I'm at my desk, apparently doesn't focus if you're further than like 5 feet away. And Ray and I were not in focus for the entire interview, and I hated that. And there was definitely a large part of me that said, oh my God, we can't use this, we gotta redo it, right? Or I'll just post the podcast, but I won't share it to YouTube. And, I'm sure I'll get some negative comments about it because it is kind of ridiculous to not have it in focus. But I want to encourage you that if you're providing value to people, they care less than you think about that stuff, right? They care less than you do. Your podcast listeners aren't affected at all. But I'm still mentioning this because I think it proves an important point for you guys. The value is what matters, right? If you can be either entertaining or provide a lot of insight or inspiration or ideas or whatever it is you're providing, that's what people are going to be focused on. They're not really going to focus on the production value. And this video for the YouTube watchers is just a perfect example of that because it is awful when it comes to the focus. But hopefully you find enough value out of it, you still enjoy it, and it doesn't ruin it too much for you. So, hello everybody listening and watching. Today I have Ray Ross here with me. She works at BombBomb as well. I'm going to let her just kind of introduce herself a little bit, talk to you about the work that she does at BombBomb before we start talking about this really interesting challenge she did a couple months ago.
Thanks, John. So yes, my name is Ray Ross, and I am a success coach over here at BombBomb. So my focus is to help people overcome their fears and self-sabotaging thoughts to try new things. And in this case, it would be video. I also help them strategize on ways to use video for client and office communications to make their workflows more scalable and build those relationships to grow their businesses as well.
So the reason I'm having you talk with us today is because back in, I think maybe November, you put yourself through a very interesting challenge. So talk to us a little bit more about what that was.
Yeah, so that challenge was called Getting Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable. And that was because I was reading a lot of articles and listening to a lot of TED Talks from psychologists, neurologists, social scientists, on how we cripple ourselves from ever seeing growth and achieving the successes that we set goals for. And what that is because when things get uncomfortable, we just decide, I don't want this. This isn't what I know. Or I think that talking on anxiety would be the best way to do it. So anytime we feel anxious in a situation, there's two types of anxiety. There's good anxiety, which back in primal days, anxiety called us to action. Same thing as anger. So when you felt those emotions, you did something about it and you pressed through whatever that obstacle or whatever that challenge was. Bad anxiety is what we experience today, where we have this negative self-talk and we start ruminating in that, and we tell ourselves these lies and we begin to believe these lies about ourselves and who we are that prevent us from any type of forward motion or success that we want to see in our lives. And then we're just miserable and unhappy. So I was kind of going through that myself.
Sure.
And I have anxiety and depression. So working through that without being medicated for it, there are several different things that you can do. But I thought, well, if I'm going through this and other people are experiencing other debilitating mentalities, then it's always easier to do this when you belong in a community that's like-minded.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from.
For sure. So what were some of the things that you were doing during this this challenge?
Well, it was a series of videos that I was posting on social media, which was terrifying. And my challenge, because I grew up in, I'm not going to say a vain family, but a family that appreciates a well-composed person.
Mm-hmm.
And so my level of attractiveness or beauty to the outside world was paramount to the value that I thought that I held myself. So my challenge over the course of 14 days was I was not going to wear any makeup in every social situation. And in turn, they had to record a video on a specific means of communication. And there were several different neurological and psychological topics that we got to the root of. What are they actually in our minds, and how do they affect us on our day-to-day? And then, of course, small challenges to help us work through them, because you can never get rid of anxiety. You can never get rid of a need for perfectionism, because that also comes for growth opportunity. And you can never get rid of imposter syndrome, that type of feeling, but you can make them less uncomfortable. Yeah. And so I would record a video, post it on social media, have a call to action and how I wanted the customers to engage or video users to engage. And then we would do it all over again a couple days later.
Yeah. Interesting. So every social setting you were in, so work, personal, all of it, no makeup. And that included the social media videos you were recording. No makeup for those too.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even some of the people that I help serve, who don't even necessarily wear makeup on a regular basis, if they're doing a video for social media, you can bet your bacon they're going to be all dialed up.
Yeah.
And that is the time you put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. Had you ever done anything even remotely like this before?
Oh, no. This, aside from not being medicated for anxiety and depression, was the hardest thing that I have ever done. Yeah. And I'll tell you, all of them but one, I re-recorded those videos about 15 times.
Yeah.
And I had to prop the videos up somewhere or start walking and then edit the video to balance it, because I was trembling recording these videos, because you're so afraid of being rejected, It's so scary to post who you are and something that's important to you on a platform where there are so many possibilities of people saying, what are you doing? Like, you look ridiculous. You're not an expert in this situation. Yeah. You're trying to take command of an opportunity that doesn't belong to you because you're not the neuroscientist. You're not the psychologist. So it was terrifying.
Yeah. If you had to weigh the two of them, which fear was biggest? The fear of, your appearance and not having makeup and showing up as your true self physically, or is it the fear of the who do you think you are? You don't know what you're talking about, more of the imposter syndrome side of things?
Wow, that is an awesome question. I would say the scariest thing was the fear of rejection after the social media post. Yeah. It wasn't not wearing makeup, because I have an incredible man at home who always tells me he likes me better without makeup anyway, because he says that's who you naturally are, and that is what is attractive to me. Of course, he's not like, oh, you're hideous without makeup on, but he's like, I prefer it, without makeup. Sure. So it was support behind the scenes that I had consistently with friends and family that made it easier. But it was posting and the fear of rejection.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting to me is when I first started, my work at BombBomb, helping people with video and stuff like that, the thing that I heard the most often being verbalized, and it still is the case, is people say, I don't like the way I look on camera. I don't like the way I sound on camera. What I'm starting to find in my own journey from having this conversation with people is that that's the surface reason people always bring up that comes to mind immediately. And that's definitely true, but it seems like underneath that, there's another layer of, I don't feel confident that I have anything valuable to say, and I'm afraid of people's criticisms and rejections, that I don't know enough and I'm not smart enough. For me, it takes the form of people, in my mind, I'm scared that people are going to see me doing this stuff and say, who the heck does John think he is? He's trying to be something he's not, trying to be some kind of big shot. Why doesn't he just stay in his lane and stop trying to, be a poser or whatever? And it never occurred to me until recently how big a factor that is for so many people.
Yeah.
So it's not just the appearance and the voice, although that certainly is there for everyone. There's a lot more under the surface.
Yeah. And it's because we are primally wired to find prediction and seek certainty. That is who we are as human beings, because back in caveman days, that's how we survived. That's how we stayed alive, was with prediction and certainty. But now in this day and age, with all of these modern technologies we have to help us live longer, be more healthy, build better communities and stronger communities all across the world, we don't need prediction and certainty, because now we have culture and technology, but we still have that mentality. So we cripple ourselves with that mentality. And most people don't know that that's how they're wired.
Yeah.
And they feel lost and they feel stuck in that. And you're right. It's just ruminating in, I'm not good enough in this and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm kind of curious, what prompted you to start this challenge in the first place anyways?
Oh, you asked me that in the beginning. What prompted me was exactly what you said. 98% of the people that I talk to on my coaching call say the exact same thing. I'm not comfortable with this. Yeah. I don't know if I can do this. And I had one customer blatantly say, I feel like an imposter doing this. I feel like a narcissist recording and sending videos of myself to these absolute strangers. And I don't want them to think that I'm a narcissist or arrogant. Yeah. And I thought, okay, if I'm having these one-to-one conversations all day, every day on the exact same mentalities and fears, let's broaden our horizons a little bit and help more people overcome this fear and anxiety. And that's where the challenge came from.
That's awesome. So did you find, because this was 14 days long you were doing this, did you find that the videos got successively easier over that 14-day window, or is it about the same level of challenge throughout the whole 14 days for you?
I think it was about the same level of challenge reflecting back on it, because I would talk myself out of recording these videos. Even though the first video saw success, the second video saw success, it was still a different topic and it was a different challenge. And I was afraid of rejection. Yeah. So it was hard the whole way through recording those videos on social media. But now I don't really wear makeup anymore. The only time I wear makeup is when I come into the office, because we don't have the best lighting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So after spending 14 days, absolutely no makeup, I guess it sounds like it freed you to use it a lot less, be more selective.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because it didn't matter anymore. Nobody saw me any differently. Nobody liked me better or worse with or without makeup on. They were just like, oh, it's Ray, Yeah. But I will say the challenge, it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be, because there weren't as many people as I wanted to join.
Sure.
And I did not do everything by the book either. So it was a lot of A/B testing through those 14 days, but it really opened up this tap of courage within me to expand my horizons and how I can encourage and empower people to account for their own abilities and see success in their personal and professional lives. So a lot of good came of it, even though it was terrifying throughout the process.
For sure. Well, and I think for so many of those things, the vision you have when you start off with what you're aiming for, what you're trying to accomplish, and what success looks like, oftentimes isn't what you get, but you end up finding so much awesomeness from that endeavor, even if it isn't what you have pictured, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
So when you got started, did any part of you think that this not wearing makeup thing would continue beyond the 14 days? Was that a part of your mind, or were you just thinking 14 days and it was almost like a surprise benefit that you started wearing it less after?
Oh, it was a total surprise. Again, the only reason that I stopped wearing makeup for those 14 days was to get uncomfortable with my customers. So they knew that I was accepting a challenge that was anxiety driven for me as well, because I don't have a fear of video.
Yeah.
And afterwards, it's more convenient. And also I began to accept the way that I look. And I started thinking to myself, I'm not hideous without makeup on.
Yeah.
And I work from home, and I thought, well, I've got great lighting here.
Yeah.
I'm at home. I'm just not going to wear makeup on my coaching calls. And customers don't know the difference. They're like, oh, another person who has value to bring to my life. Great, let's get started,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's always interesting how little other people care, about the way you look. And especially, you're right, if they don't know, right? If they don't know the baseline, they don't know that you look 10% worse today than you looked yesterday, or 10% better. They have no idea.
Yeah.
You're just a person to them, and that's how they evaluate you.
Yeah. And that's the truth too. People don't care what we look like. What they care about is the value that we're providing to their lives and how they can relate to us. We are creatures of community. We are creatures of a need for belonging. So, you don't need makeup to do that.
Yeah. It's actually something similar just came up in a conversation I was having with a friend of mine on LinkedIn. Because as I'm starting this podcast and YouTube channel, I'm drowning in imposter syndrome myself. But one of the things that I was reminded of is a quote that I heard, and I'll probably butcher the quote, but it's something to the effect of, we wouldn't worry so much what people thought of us if we realized how rarely they do. Basically, the idea is people have their own problems, their own life, their own crap to deal with that they're focused on. They don't have a lot of bandwidth to care that Ray Ross didn't wear makeup today, or that John Mahan's starting a YouTube channel. They are so caught up in their own stuff, in their own world. People really aren't nearly as judgmental as you think, and they really don't notice or care as much. So, what you described about, I don't have the authority to speak on this topic, right? I'm feeling the same thing, like starting my own podcast and a YouTube channel. Who the heck cares what I have to say? Who am I? And again, my self-talk and my fear is that everyone around me is going to be looking at me thinking the same thing. But the reality is they just got way too much to worry about to care that I'm starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, and to make judgments about me for it. They got their own stuff to worry about. So I think that's what you mentioned too with, the makeup thing, right? People are so much focused on them and the way you can help them and their struggles. No one has the bandwidth to notice whether or not you're wearing makeup, or to care, even if they notice.
Exactly. And John, you touched on something that is so important to me, because in the busyness of our lives, we forget that every human being on the planet thinks and feels just as complexly as we do. And I think that's a part of where we begin to feel dehumanized and also dehumanize other people, because we don't see other humans commonly as intrinsic, complex human beings with their own fears and dreams and ambitions. We see them as another life form that walks through that we can communicate with, So I love that you said that. We are so complex, and we have our own neurological patterns that we're trying to maneuver our ways through and overcome our own fears. So that's awesome.
For sure. Well, I think too, there's so many things in our life and our society that everyone experiences the same kind of negative stuff, but no one's willing to talk about it, right? We all feel like we have to keep this act up for the benefit of each other, and of course, we're all just mutually, drowning in this, right? So, this fear of being on camera, this, a pre-obsession or preoccupation with how we look and how we're coming across to other people. It seems like everyone mutually buys into this myth that people care, right? And that people are judging you on this. And really, one of the areas that I see this totally outside the world of video, but I see this in this myth that we all live in clean houses. And every time someone comes over to our house, we have to clean the house to make sure people know that we live in a clean house. But I would say, with the exception of maybe 10% of people who really enjoy cleaning, and find that emotionally satisfying, I bet you 89% of us mostly live in messy houses.
Yeah.
And we just panic and clean the house when people come over so they don't judge us.
Yeah.
So we're all mutually afraid of judging each other. And it's like, come on, guys. We're all in the same boat together here, right? We're all feeling the same way, doing the same stuff. And I think sometimes all it takes is someone to step forward in a little bit of courage like you've done and say, you know what, my house isn't clean. Or you know what, this isn't the way I normally look. Or hey, this is how I'm feeling. And I think by you living that way and showing up that way, it gives other people permission to also live their best lives and show up that way.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, because it's small steps of vulnerability like that in social situations that encourage people and give them the courage to exude that type of vulnerability as well. And when you can relate to somebody on that deeper level of just like, oh my God, I hardly ever clean my house except for when family comes over.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It really, again, subconsciously brings that sense of belonging and acceptance and allows you to be your best self more consistently. Man, you're just like hitting it on the money. I love this. This is awesome.
Well, one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, from someone who also mentors people in video, is that one of the best things you can do to step forward in something that feels terrifying, and she always teaches in the concept of video, but of course this applies to any big, bold move you're making in life and career, is if you can stop focusing on yourself and the impact of yourself and start focusing on the other people that you'll be helping, it really helps you get out of your own head some. So, for some people, recording a video is the primary thoughts in their mind are, how do I look? How do I sound? Is my voice good? Is my makeup good? Do I sound like I'm competent, or do I sound like I'm a rambling idiot? Like, it's all about them, right? And that can get really, really difficult to work through. So one of the things that Lisa Archer, she teaches, is that you want to start focusing on the impact your video will have on the recipient. And at that point, it almost doesn't matter how you come across, because it's not really about you. It's about the person that you're helping. So I had to adopt that same mindset as I got started with this Ngari project that I'm doing. Because again, when I was thinking about myself and how I looked and what people would think of me and all these things, it was just overwhelming. But when I shifted out of that mindset and said, all right, regardless of how much of a fool I look like and how much of an imposter I come across as, who will I be helping by doing this? And I think that's kind of where the thoughts was, right? As I said, all right, by making myself vulnerable, by showing up in this way and creating this channel and even being open about my journey and how I feel as I'm doing it, I'm going to be helping people. And I just kept my eyes trained on who I was going to be helping. And it helped me step out of how do I come across while I'm doing this? Because I was getting really, really mired in that stuff. Do you have a similar experience on your end as you did your challenge?
Oh my God. I still do. And I think it comes with time, but I also, like I said previously, I don't think that we can ever fully overcome those feelings, but they get less uncomfortable. And the more we allow ourselves these opportunities of growth in accounting for our abilities and getting uncomfortable for the benefit of growth and success, the more we're going to have the courage to do it. Because if we experience failure is no longer a scary word that impacts our identity. It is an experience that gives us an opportunity of growth. And the only way that we can truly grasp what failure actually is if we walk through it.
Yeah.
And then it's way less scary. And when you take away the power of fear and you just allow yourself to be consistently uncomfortable, then you're good to go.
Do you have any particular, advice or tips you would give to someone who's trying to embark on something that feels very vulnerable, that involves them showing up as they are, whether that's video or something else they're doing in their life? Anything that you learned over that 14 days that helped you power through that could help someone else?
Yes, I have two. The first is with the people that you trust and the people that are safest to you, lean into those healthy relationships and allow these people to be there for you. Allow them the opportunity to encourage and support you. You're not in the way. You're on a new adventure and you're bringing these people along that adventure with you, which absolutely they're going to want to be a part of. The second is always be careful about what you're telling yourself. About 95% of what we feel and think on a day-to-day basis is in our subconscious. So if you are allowing yourself negative self-talk throughout the day, you are going to inhibit your opportunity for growth and success. So what I do is I have 3 statements that I put on my computer. One is I am, I have, and I am unwilling. I am strong. I have courage. I am unwilling to accept the negative self-talk that I am ruminating in on a daily basis. And when you consistently remind yourself of your value and who you are as an intrinsic human being, that's going to help give you the courage to lean into these opportunities as well.
So during this 14 days, about how many times a day did you find yourself having to go through that I am, I have, I'm unwilling list yourself?
I would sit there and stare at that for about 5 minutes.
Really?
Before I would record and re-record my videos, because you can trick yourself into believing these truths, just like you tricked yourself into believing those lies. And it's all about changing the thought patterns in our brain. They're literally grooves in our brain, the way that we think, and you can change them. So a lot.
So what would you say to someone who the negative self-talk that's in their head feels so right, and the positive self-talk they try to replace it with just feels like manufactured, made up bullcrap? How do you make the positive self-talk feel more real and not just feel like a fake platitude?
What an awesome question. I accepted this challenge when I was 22 years old, and it was the most exhausting day of my life. So I was very negative and very emotional because of how negative I was. And so what I did is I said, for a whole day, any negative thought that comes into my head, I am going to immediately start thinking about something else. And it wasn't necessarily something positive. For example, I was sitting at my desk and I started having these negative thoughts. And as soon as I caught it, I was like, the pen's blue, the microphone is silver, just anything to change my thought pattern, anything to break that cycle. And at the end of the day, I was so exhausted. Yeah. But the next day, it got a little bit easier to be able to recognize that I was being negative. So it's practice. Okay. It is a lot of practice, and it's also being aware of yourself. But it can happen. It can happen for every human being. Absolutely no person on the planet is stuck in a mindset. You can overcome it. It all depends on how hard you're willing to work to overcome it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's something I've been thinking about, and I don't know where I stand on this, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Some book I was reading or podcast I was listening to made the suggestion that when you're in that situation where the right self-talk feels like bullcrap and the wrong self-talk feels so good, what you need to do is not try the absolute right, perfect self-talk that just feels like it's totally fake, because it's not going to work. What you have to do is find a just slightly better version of the negative self-talk and tell yourself that until that feels better. And then get a slightly more positive version. And you kind of step yourself up to the really positive self-talk. So if your self-talk is, this is crap, just switch that to, this feels like crap. And then switch that to, this feels unpleasant. And then you can eventually work yourself up to, this is actually helping me grow. I should be grateful to be in this tough situation because I'll come out better. But if you were to try going from this is absolute garbage all the way to I should be grateful for this opportunity, it's not going to work because it's just too big of a leap. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on when you know what the right self-talk is? Do you go straight for the right self-talk right away and just keep repeating it? Or do you kind of stagger step it until you get to the true best self-talk?
That's an awesome question. I don't think that any of us have the right self-talk to start. I think that, again, leaning into relationships of people that encourage you and owning what they're saying about you, the things that they see about you that you don't, i.e., oh my gosh, you are so incredibly smart. I would never be able to find a resolution like that. How did you do that? When you're thinking, I'm a total idiot, anybody can do this kind of situation. I think that it's not, I do like the transition from I'm an idiot to I feel like an idiot, but I also think that negative self-talk is negative self-talk and we're always going to find a way to own it. So I don't think it's immediately shifting towards positive self-talk. I think it's just getting out of your head to start.
Interesting.
Because that's what worked for me. And I was going to a psychiatrist for years who also helped me with that. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's not necessarily immediately going to positive self-talk, but it's retraining your brain to not think negatively by thinking about something else. And that could be neutral, i.e., the microphone is silver.
Yeah.
The picture's gray.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I guess closing question here. Describe 3 ways your life is different now that you've gone through that uncomfortable spell, gone through that challenge. How are you different on the back end of that compared to how you were going into it?
The first is I am not as image-based as I used to be. My value does not come from my appearance anymore as much as it used to. The second is I am a lot more brave with the opportunities that I accept and charting going through uncharted waters, however you say that nautical phrase.
Yeah.
And the final thing is I would say that I am more empathetic with the people that are going through struggles, whether I understand those struggles or not, if I've walked through them or not. I understand what fear does. I understand what anxiety does. And I really understand what self-talk does now, which helps me encourage and empower my clients' fear through these things because I am walking through it as well with them, just in a different sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's a well-spent 14 days then.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, that'll be it for today. Thanks, guys, for watching / listening. I hope you enjoyed it, found value in it. And of course, please feel free, if you're watching this on YouTube, comment below. If you're listening to the podcast, send me a message. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you or anyone you know is open to being interviewed on this topic as well, I would absolutely love to have a chance to talk with you.
All right, then there you have it. So poor, video quality, lots of edits had to be thrown in there to cover for all the mishaps, but hopefully you found a lot of value in this interview with Ray. And please, if you would like to be interviewed about your own experiences, I'm looking for people who are totally brand new and terrified. I'm looking for people who have made some headway but still have a long way to go. And I'm looking for people who have put that fear of being on camera behind them. All people, in all stages of the journey. So if you want to be interviewed, absolutely let me know. I would love to hear about it. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you know somebody who might be interested in being interviewed as well, please make the introduction between us. Share them this episode, and I look forward to hearing from you.